You ever look at some of the most effective people, or even entire organizations, and feel like they're just operating on a different level? It's like they don't just solve problems, they actually evolve past them. Well, it turns out they've mastered a deeper way of learning. And today, we're going to break down exactly what that is and how you can start using it too.
But first, let's talk about a situation that I'm sure is frustratingly familiar. You're on a team, right? Everyone is smart, everyone is dedicated, and yet you keep running into the same roadblocks month after month. It feels like you're just spinning your wheels. Why does this happen, especially with the best people? Well, the answer has everything to do with how we actually learn.
To really get to the bottom of this, we're going to lean on a framework from this brilliant organizational theorist, Argyris. He saw that there are two totally different ways we diagnose and solve problems. He called them the two loops of learning.
Okay, so first up, you've got single-loop learning. The easiest way to think about this is like a thermostat. Its job is super simple. Keep the room at 68 degrees. If it gets too cold, whoops, that's an error. It detects it and kicks on the heat to fix it. Problem solved. In the real world, this is all about fixing problems and improving processes to meet the goals we already have. It's totally necessary, but it's also limited.
And that brings us to the next level, double-loop learning. Now, imagine if that same thermostat could just stop for a second and ask, hang on, why 68 degrees? Who decided that? Is that even the right goal to begin with? That is double-loop learning. It's not just about fixing errors in the system, it's about stepping back and questioning the system itself.
So really, it all boils down to two very different questions. Single-loop learning asks, are we doing things right? It's about efficiency. Double-loop learning, on the other hand, asks, are we doing the right things? And that's all about effectiveness. One tweaks the plan, the other asks if we have the right plan at all.
So, you'd think that the smartest, most successful, most highly educated people would be absolute pros at this deeper double-loop learning, right? But here's the crazy paradox that Argyris discovered. They're often the absolute worst at it. And it's not because they're not smart enough or not motivated. No, it's a direct result of their long history of success. And the main culprit here has a name: defensive reasoning. See, because high achievers so rarely fail, they never really build up the mental muscles for learning from failure. So when their ideas get challenged, their gut reaction isn't curiosity, it's to get defensive. And when that becomes the default setting for a team or a whole company, it creates these massive blind spots that can lead to total disaster. This defensiveness comes from a really specific mindset. High achievers tend to have these impossibly high standards for themselves, which creates this deep, paralyzing fear of failure. It can trigger what's called a doom loop, this spiral of shame and despair when things aren't perfect. And they don't ease into it either. They doom-zoom, diving headfirst into that feeling almost instantly.
All right, so to really understand defensive reasoning, we have to look at this gap, this disconnect between what we say we believe and what we actually do. It's the difference between our intentions and our actions, and for most of us, that gap is way bigger than we think.
Argyris had names for this. There's our espoused theory. That's what we say we do. Oh yeah, I value open feedback. And then there's our theory in use, what our actual behavior shows we do, like, say, always finding a reason to avoid that difficult but necessary conversation. And the wild part, most of us are completely blind to this contradiction in ourselves. This defensive behavior, our theory in use, basically runs on a kind of internal software that Argyris called Model I, and it's guided by 4 core values. Number 1, always be in control. 2, maximize winning and minimize losing at all costs. 3, shove down any negative feelings. And 4, be rational, which really just means define your goal and stick to it, even if all the evidence says it's not working. You can see how this is a recipe for disaster. Okay, so if Model I is the problem, what's the solution? Well, it's about making a conscious choice to shift to a whole new mental operating system. Argyris called it productive reasoning, or Model 2. This is all about being just as rigorous and honest about our own behavior as we are about a business plan.
And Model 2 runs on a totally different set of values. Instead of being obsessed with control and winning, it's all about getting to valid information. It's about making sure people have a free and informed choice. And it's about making sure there's a real internal commitment to whatever choice is made. This is a foundation for learning, not just self-protection. And you can really see the difference side by side here. Model I, the defensive model, leads to trying to control everything yourself. It creates defensive relationships and traps you in that basic single-loop learning. But Model 2? That fosters joint control, learning-oriented relationships, and it's what finally unlocks that powerful double-loop thinking. And the result, as you can see, is a huge jump in effectiveness.
So if you're going to take one thing away, let it be this. The single most important behavioral shift you can make is to learn how to combine articulate advocacy with genuine inquiry. What does that mean? It means you state your view clearly and confidently, and then you genuinely invite other people to try and poke holes in it. You don't ask questions just to be polite. You ask them because you truly want to find out what you might be missing.
Okay, I know, this all sounds great on paper, but how do you actually do it? Changing your own internal programming is hard. It has to start with building some real self-awareness. And luckily, there's a fantastic tool for that. It's called the left-hand column exercise. Here's how it works. On the right side of a page, you write out the script of a difficult conversation you had or need to have. Then, on the left side, you write down everything you were thinking and feeling but didn't actually say. The point isn't to judge yourself. It's to generate data. That left-hand column is pure, raw data about how your theory in use is running the show. Once you see that gap between what you thought and what you said, you can start to redesign the conversation. It's a game changer.
So let's look at an example. Here's a classic Model I defensive conversation. The professional says the clients have to be open. They must want to change, basically blaming the client. And the manager just volleys back, it's our task to help them see that change is in their interest. Notice what's happening? They're talking at each other. They're just assigning blame. No real learning can happen here.
Now let's compare that to a productive Model 2 conversation. The professional actually takes responsibility, saying, "We never really told you how we felt. Behind your back, we were bad-mouthing you." And check out the manager's response. It is brilliant. Instead of getting defensive, he immediately asks, "Was there anything I said or did that gave you the idea that you had better not raise this with me?" That one question completely changes the dynamic. It lowers the defenses and opens the door to actually figure out what's going on. And believe me, the stakes for getting this right are incredibly high. These little individual defensive habits, they stack up. They get embedded in a company's culture. In one famous case, a company lost over $100 million on a new product, all because there was an unwritten rule. You do not question top management. Bad news just got filtered out as it went up the chain until the disaster was just unavoidable.
So, what this all really comes down to is a fundamental shift in how we think about our work and ourselves. The real challenge isn't always having the right answer. It's getting really, really good at asking the right questions, especially the hard ones, the ones that challenge our own most cherished assumptions. So, the question I want to leave you with is this: what are you afraid to ask?